Have you ever stood by a really fast mountain stream? You know, the kind where water's just rushing past?
Oh, yeah. Powerful stuff.
And then you see a little trout just holding its place
Yeah.
effortlessly, not getting swept away.
Right. Or even darting upstream against that current.
Exactly. And it's kind of puzzling, isn't it? How does it actually do that? Conventional science, well, it struggles a bit to fully explain that kind of natural elegance.
It's a perfect hook, really. It shows nature doing things we don't always grasp. And it was precisely these kinds of observations, spending years, decades really, just watching nature, especially water,
Immersed in it.
completely, that led this forester, Viktor Schauberger, to develop some really radical ideas, insights that some people definitely called hidden.
And that's what we're doing today. We're going to explore Schauberger's world. We're using excerpts from the book Hidden Nature, the startling insights of Viktor Schauberger to guide us.
Yeah, it's a compilation of his observations, his unique thinking, his experiences.
So the mission is to unpack his core ideas, how he saw nature, energy, water, his views on forests, soil, technology, some really controversial stuff in there too.
Basically, we're trying to give you a shortcut to understanding this really different perspective. Why his ideas often got dismissed, maybe even suppressed, and, well, maybe you'll gain some surprising insights yourself.
Okay, let's get into it. Schauberger's core vision.
Yeah.
He didn't see nature as like a machine to be tinkered with or exploited.
No, not at all. He saw it as this incredibly intelligent, creative system, almost like it had a purpose, an evolutionary drive.
And he looked at how nature uses energy.
Exactly. Things like, say, a hurricane forming, or just a plant growing, or how water spirals in a river. He saw these methods as silent, super effective, incredibly powerful.
And he contrasted that with us.
Yeah.
Human technology.
Sharply. He saw our tech as, well, noisy, wasteful, inefficient, and fundamentally working against that natural creative flow he observed everywhere.
And this is a central point, right? The difference in motion.
Yes, this is absolutely key. He noticed nature almost always uses centripetal motion, inwardly spiraling, vortical. Think whirlpools, twists.
And that kind of motion is associated with
Cooling, condensing, building structure, quality life. It's generative.
whereas our technology.
Tends to rely on the opposite. Centrifugal force, pushing outwards, breaking things apart, disintegrative. It generates heat, wastes energy, leads towards decay.
So from his perspective, our way of generating and using energy is actually harmful. It creates a downward spiral.
That was exactly his view, degrading the quality of life, of organisms, the environment itself. He saw our technological path as fundamentally clashing with nature's creative impulse.
Okay, and this really comes through in his relationship with water, doesn't it?
Right.
Decades as a forester.
Gave him this incredibly deep, intimate connection. He was always watching it, streams, rivers, how it behaved in the forest.
He didn't see it as just, HOO.
No, absolutely not. For him, it was a living substance, active, vital, especially when it was moving naturally, fulfilling its potential to bring life.
The blood of the earth,
That's what he called it. Essential for the planet's health, just like our blood is for us.
which loops us right back to that trout.
Uh-huh.
So how did he explain its ability to swim against the current?
It was ingenious, really. He proposed guide veins in the gills that directed water into these powerful backward-moving vortices.
Vortices again?
Always vortices, and the shiny scales. Not just for looks, he thought they minimized friction, but also created tiny, amplifying vortices along the body.
Amplifying, so they boost the effect.
Yeah, strengthening that countercurrent effect. Then add in flicks of the tail, creating negative pressure. Even the flapping of the gills amplifying the vortices. It all combined to give that push upstream.
Wow. And there was an experiment mentioned about temperature.
Right, the source mentions it. Apparently, he had colleagues heat just a small amount of water upstream from a trout holding its position.
What happened?
When that slightly warmer, less structured water reached the trout, it couldn't cope. It became agitated, lost its place, started thrashing about.
So it couldn't use its vortex mechanism.
Exactly. It showed how incredibly sensitive the trout's ability was to the quality, the structure, and the temperature of the water.
That temperature sensitivity seems crucial for Schauberger. He talked about water's anomaly point.
Yes, at +4 degrees Celsius, that's about 39 Fahrenheit. It's where water is densest, coldest, and he believed held the most potential energy, the most life force.
And it behaves weirdly below that temperature, right? Unlike other liquids.
It does. It expands as it gets colder towards freezing and expands even more when it turns to ice. Most things contract when they get colder.
And the significance of that +4 degree dense water.
Well, being densest means it's also heaviest and, in his view, strongest. He observed this was the water in a stream that could carry the most sediment, even heavy logs.
Ah, so that observation tied into his later work.
Absolutely. It was foundational for his ideas about log flumes, which we'll get to.
He also got into some pretty far-out territory with water having a memory.
Yeah, that's definitely controversial. The idea that water retains an energetic imprint of substances it's encountered, even if they're physically gone. The source mentions researchers like Jacques Benveniste looking into similar things, though it caused a big stir.
What are the implications of that, if it's true?
Well, from Schauberger's viewpoint, it means water that's been piped through unnatural systems, treated chemically. It could carry negative energetic patterns from those processes.
So the water itself is damaged, in a way.
Energetically damaged, yes. It connects to ideas in homeopathy, where dilution plus vigorous shaking or succussion is thought to potentize, to imprint the water structure with the energy of the substance.
So water isn't just stuff, it carries information, energy.
That's exactly how he saw it. A carrier of subtle energy and information, not just physical matter.
And he made distinctions between different types of water.
He did. True spring water was the ideal emerging, vibrant, often shimmering blue, usually at that vital +4 degrees C. He saw it as a product of deep interaction between rainwater and the Earth's energies.
Compared to, say, surface water.
Right. Seepage springs, fed more by surface runoff and gravity, are warmer, less vital. Well, water varies. And he was quite critical of commercial bottled spring water, saying it often wasn't true spring water and that plastic containers degraded its quality anyway.
Let's talk about rivers. He didn't see them as just channels for water, did he?
No, they were living systems,
Mm-hmm.
self-organizing, intelligent even. He observed that healthy natural rivers maintain their vitality through these inwardly spiraling longitudinal vortices.
Spiraling down the middle.
Yeah, down the central axis, alternating clockwise and anti-clockwise spins. This specific natural movement is what keeps the water alive, according to him.
How so? What does that motion do?
It constantly cools and recools the water, keeping it near that optimal +4 degrees. This leads to smoother, faster, laminar flow. It also helps the river process or eject impurities.
He also mentioned rivers breathing. What was that about?
Yeah, the river breathing is driven by temperature changes. Friction with the bed and banks warms the water slightly near the edges. That's a negative temperature gradient. Colder in the middle, warmer towards the banks.
And when water warms up?
It loses energy, becomes less able to carry things, so it deposits sediment. But where that deposited sediment creates a little drop or overfall, the water forms a barrel vortex.
Which cools it down again.
Exactly. Creates a positive temperature gradient, warmer to colder towards the center. That cooler, energized water can then pick up sediment again. This cycle of warming, depositing, and cooling picking up, that was the river's natural breath or rhythm.
These temperature gradients sound really important in his thinking. Positive versus negative.
Absolutely fundamental. A positive gradient energy flowing from warmer to colder he saw as life-enhancing. It drives nutrient transfer, allows rainwater to penetrate soil properly, recharges groundwater. It builds things up.
And negative gradients.
Colder to warmer. He associated that with disintegration, breakdown, decay. Healthy systems maintain a dominance of positive gradients. Degeneration happens when negative gradients prevail.
Okay, let's shift from water itself to the land. Trees. He saw them as pretty special.
The pinnacle of plant life, basically. Super efficient energy exchangers between the earth and the sun, and literally the earth lungs, regulating atmosphere and temperature.
And their role in the water cycle.
Critical. Forests actually encourage rainfall. They keep the ground cool, which allows rainwater to sink in deeply, that positive temperature gradient, again recharging groundwater, those vital aquifers, and they maintain a balanced greenhouse effect.
He even differentiated between evaporation from forests and oceans.
Yeah, he felt the quality of energy was different. Evapotranspiration from a diverse natural forest carried a kind of balanced, creative energy imprint from the whole complex system.
Whereas ocean evaporation
Was driven more by raw solar energy. He felt that untamed energy contributed more to the kind of atmospheric heat associated with global warming. A subtle but important distinction for him.
and temperature gradients played a role within the tree, too.
Definitely. Heat energy in the outer parts supports active growth. But he believed the colder conditions deeper inside and the descending sap flow interacting with rising sap, especially at night with that positive gradient towards the cooler exterior, that was crucial for creating the dense hardwood in the growth rings.
Interesting. And sap movement itself. He had unique ideas there, too.
He saw it influenced by cosmic cycles. The sun inhaling, drawing sap up during the day, the moon exhaling, drawing energy down to the roots at night.
Like a pulse.
Exactly. And as the sap rises, coarser elements get deposited, building the physical trunk. But the vessels narrow towards the top, increasing the sap's velocity and, in his view, potentizing it.
Potentizing?
Well,
Like homeopathy again.
kind of, yeah. Increasing the energetic potential of the very fine particles reaching the leaves. The source mentions a concept using U-tubes and capillaries to sort of illustrate this pulsating, refining movement.
Which connects to trees as biocondensers?
Right. They don't just grow physically, they refine and enhance the life force energy, the blueprint for growth. This highly potentized energy at the leaves allows the tree to absorb pure creative energy from rainwater landing there, driving intense growth.
But it also makes those areas vulnerable.
Very highly sensitive to damage if the conditions aren't optimal.
What about parasites on trees? He had a different take on that too, didn't he?
He did. He didn't see them as the cause of sickness. More like nature's health police.
Man.
Meaning they show up when a tree's metabolism is already weakened or disturbed, usually by unnatural conditions like too much heat, poor soil, lack of shade, making the tree evolutionarily unfit in a way. A truly healthy tree, he argued, naturally gets rid of parasites.
So parasites are a symptom, not the root cause.
That was his perspective, which obviously leads to grave concerns about forest destruction.
The consequences seem huge through his lens.
Catastrophic, really. Water shortages, climate disruption, biodiversity loss, soil degradation, a breakdown of the whole creation pyramid, as you might put it. The source mentions historical deforestation in places like the Mediterranean, North Africa, and the current critical state of the Amazon.
He saw the Amazon as vital for the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah, like a heat engine and rainfall generator. He also pointed out that those big industrial monoculture forests lack the energetic vitality and biodiversity of natural ones.
But he did offer some hope about replanting.
Yes, there's a hopeful note. He observed that planting the right kinds of pioneer trees, even in barren, arid areas, could actually start to attract rainfall again over time, initiating healing, restoring those gradients and cycles.
That idea of working with nature carries over into farming too, right? His observations in Bulgaria.
Right. The source describes him noticing fields worked with traditional wooden plows, sometimes pulled slowly by women, were consistently fertile.
Compared to?
Nearby fields plowed faster with tractors using steel plows. Those fields showed declining yields and poorer soil health.
And he blamed the metal and the speed.
He did. He thought the iron or steel had a negative effect on the Earth's energy, and the speed disrupted the vital water structure in the soil, harmed it.
What about fertilizers? Artificial ones like NPK.
The source presents a critical view. It traces NPK back to early work by Liebig, focusing on just replacing a few minerals. Schauberger apparently saw these as products of fire technology made with intense heat, disintegrative, and applied broadly, unlike nature's focused generative processes.
And Liebig himself had second thoughts.
The book points out that Liebig later warned against depending solely on these chemicals, saying it would damage the soil long term.
The source links NPK dependency to things like the Dust Bowl.
Yeah, in the U.S. Midwest, and warns about similar problems now in developing countries adopting those methods. It positions organic and biodynamic farming as more aligned with Schauberger's principles.
Is there a way to fix depleted soil according to this view?
Remineralization is mentioned, using finely ground rock dust, volcanic, glacial, to put back the trace elements lost over time.
And Schauberger had his own composting methods.
He did. The source describes his specific egg-shaped compost heap design, often built under a fruit tree.
Egg-shaped, why?
That shape comes up a lot. It's seen as a life-generating form. The heap had layers, leaf mold, vegetable matter, earth, gravel, sand, but also additions like copper and zinc filings.
Metal filings.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The idea the book suggests was to capture and focus subtle earth energies, creating what he called cold fermentation, a process that fostered life-enhancing forces, not decay.
And he believed in actively energizing compost or water.
Yeah. The source mentions alpine farmers traditionally stirring mixtures vigorously, even singing into them, believing they were building creative energy in the water structure.
Singing into the compost.
Apparently. And his son, Walter, later designed a modern egg-shaped vessel with a special gold impeller, inspired by this, to infuse water with carbon dioxide and re-energize it.
How would you apply it?
Simply flicking the energized liquid onto the soil with a branch. Very low-tech application.
All these practical things seem rooted in a deeper view of nature's patterns and energies.
Definitely. A core idea, which actually echoes modern physics, is that everything is energy. Matter is just energy vibrating at different rates, creating the illusion of solidness. Everything's in motion.
And that motion creates vibration,
Yeah.
frequency.
Right. The speed of motion determines the vibration rate, giving everything its own unique frequency, its resonant frequency.
Resonance can be constructive or destructive.
It's
Very good.
hugely powerful either way. Sympathetic vibrations amplify. Destructive vibrations, well, destroy.
The source gives the example of sonar in whales.
Yeah, it's a stark one. It suggests it's not just the volume, but the resonance. The sonar frequency makes tiny air bubbles in the whale's head resonate, expand violently, causing massive tissue damage. Apparently, even at levels and distances conventional physics might deem safe. It's about the quality of the energy interaction.
So Schauberger's, like older traditions, saw patterns and shapes in nature as evidence of order.
Yes, evidence of underlying laws, a cosmic design. He was apparently often frustrated that mainstream science focused only on the physical, rejecting any idea of a guiding influence or inherent orderliness in the cosmos.
This connects to things like sacred geometry.
Exactly. Recognizing specific shapes and ratios, the 3-4-5 triangle, squaring the circle, the vesica-piscis shape, and especially the golden mean, phi about 1.618.
Found everywhere.
Everywhere. Seashells, plant growth, galaxies. Ancients saw these not just as math, but as the signature of creation, divine proportions.
And the fundamental movement in this ordered creation.
Not straight lines, it's spirals, vortices. For Schauberger, the vortex is the primary creative movement in the universe, transforming energy, structuring matter from galaxies down to atoms.
Spirals bring order from chaos.
That's the idea. Fluid energy, evolving complexity. You see it in tornadoes, how plants grow, muscle fibers, blood flow, even energy patterns dowsers detect.
And he contrasted these natural open forms.
Spirals, shells, egg shapes, non-Euclidean, dynamic, encouraging change. He contrasted those with the closed, straight-line, Euclidean forms we tend to use,
Roads, buildings, pipes.
which he saw as static, rigid, often working against life, promoting disintegration.
What drives all this motion and form? What's the engine?
Polarity, the constant interplay of attraction and repulsion, the dance of creation,
Example.
positive and negative electricity, north-south poles in magnetism, biological balance, the sexes. It's everywhere. The source even mentions different ideas about the ideal balance ratio, 60.4, Schauberger's 2/3 own third, or ratios related to the golden mean.
And this all ties back to the idea of subtle versus coarse energies.
Right. Refined energy prevails over coarser energy. Our technology, he believed, mainly propagates coarse, destructive, heat-based energies that overwhelm nature's subtle, creative, cool systems.
Like compassion overcoming selfishness.
But that's a good analogy presented in the source, yeah. Refined versus coarse.
Which leads directly to his ideas about energy production. Nature's way versus ours.
Nature's way, he observed, is silent, efficient, powerful, based on implosion, drawing inward, concentrating energy creatively.
Whereas we mostly use
Explosion, pushing outward, combustion, fission, generating immense heat, pressure, waste, based on those centrifugal disintegrative forces.
And Schauberger claimed he could harness implosion, build machines.
He did. He claimed to have built over unity devices, machines that produced more energy than they consumed. Clean energy, no pollution, no waste, no damage, all based on harnessing implosion.
How powerful is implosion?
He cited physicist Felix Ehrenhaft, who apparently suggested suction or implosion could be something like 127 times more powerful than explosion, a huge difference.
But where are these machines now?
That's the big problem, isn't it? The source consistently states that working models, prototypes of the more advanced energy devices, were destroyed or confiscated. Detailed plans are missing.
Making it very hard to verify or replicate today.
Extremely difficult based on the available public information, yes.
But some of his earlier, simpler applications were successful and well documented.
Oh, yes. Based on the same core principles, just applied differently.
Like the log flumes.
The classic example. Back in the 1920s, he designed and built these spiral-shaped wooden flumes
Why spiral?
to imitate how water naturally flows in river bends. This allowed heavy logs to be transported downstream smoothly without getting damaged by banging against the sides, which happened in crude, straight channels.
And it worked.
Apparently extremely well, saved timber companies a fortune. But he still faced huge resistance from conventional engineers and academics who didn't grasp the principles.
He also applied these ideas to water pipes. He wasn't a fan of modern pipes.
Hated them. He contrasted old wooden water mains, which he felt allowed water to breathe, interact with the earth, stay cool and vital, with modern steel or iron pipes.
What was wrong with metal pipes, in his view?
He believed the friction and an unnatural flow heated the water, causing elements to decompose. Rust consumes oxygen needed by beneficial microbes. Pathogenic bacteria could thrive. Flow gets constricted. You end up with dead, devitalized water at the tap, often made worse by chemical treatments.
So what was his solution?
He designed a special pipe, often wooden, but the key was the internal shape and sometimes guide vanes made of materials like silver-plated copper.
Guide vanes. To do what?
To create a specific double spiral longitudinal vortex moving down the pipe, a centripetal inward spiraling motion.
Like in a natural river.
Exactly, mimicking nature. He argued this motion kept the water cool, vital, and actually accelerated it. It supposedly pushed harmful bacteria to the walls where oxygen could eliminate them, while beneficial microbes survived in the core flow. It created a natural, pulsating flow.
Did anyone ever test these ideas?
Apparently, yes. The source mentions tests at Stuttgart Technical University in 1952. They reportedly found that when the water flow resonated correctly with his pipe designs, friction dropped dramatically, almost zero in some configurations.
Wow. That seems to support his claims about natural water movement being highly efficient.
It certainly suggests there was something significant to his observations about flow dynamics.
And he saw parallels between water flow and blood circulation.
He did. He questioned the idea that the heart is just a pump. He thought subtle energy dynamics, temperature differences, charge, the blood's own energetic activity were crucial, and the pulsating action of capillaries.
Is there any other research backing that up?
The source mentions Professor Burgel's work suggesting capillaries are key pulsators, and the heart mainly stimulates that pulse. And interestingly, it cites a recent discovery that blood flow in arteries actually follows a spiral pattern.
Spirals again. Okay, beyond pipes, what other machines did he design?
There is the repulsator, an egg-shaped device, usually copper with silvered surfaces, using an impeller to create those alternating right-left vortices.
What was this for?
Designed to take degraded tap water or stagnant water and transform it back into high-quality, vital spring water, re-energizing it.
And then there's the really famous one, the repulsine, the flying saucer.
Right, that's the one that captures the imagination. He developed prototypes exploring free energy generation and also levitation, flight.
And the Nazi connection.
According to accounts in the source, yes. His work was apparently co-opted, and prototypes were developed further, potentially as part of a secret weapons program late in the war.
Is there any evidence of it working?
The book recounts a story, a specific claimed test flight in Prague, February 1945. Supposedly reached 15,000 meters altitude in 3 minutes, incredibly fast forward speed too, over 2,000 kilo pH.
That's astonishing, if true.
Absolutely. The account claims it was then deliberately destroyed to prevent capture.
How was it supposed to work? Any idea?
The principle described involves drawing in air or water, forcing it through specially shaped spiral pipes at high speed. This supposedly transformed the medium into a highly energized living state. Releasing this energized medium then created immense force, possibly a powerful suction or implosion effect generating lift.
Very different from rockets or jets.
Completely different principle. Implosion, not explosion.
Were there other machines mentioned?
A few others are listed briefly. An air turbine using tornado principles, supposedly for fuel-less flight, other implosion machines creating powerful vacuums, and something called the climator for home heating and cooling using natural principles.
But the fate of all these advanced machines is the same story.
Pretty much. Destroyed, lost, confiscated by Soviets or Americans after the war, or designs taken by private consortia. The trail goes cold.
Which leads to the question, if this technology worked, why isn't it common knowledge? Why aren't we using it?
The source offers a perspective on that. It points to the immense power and control held by existing energy industries, oil, coal, utilities. It suggests resistance from established sectors like aerospace.
And military interests.
And a tendency for radical new technologies, if they emerge, to be classified and potentially developed in secret black programs, possibly for military advantage rather than public benefit.
So a potential cover-up or suppression.
That's the viewpoint strongly suggested in the source material. We're just relaying that perspective, not confirming it ourselves, of course.
Stepping back a bit, Schauberger wasn't just a technologist. He had a critique of society itself, didn't he?
Oh, definitely. He saw modern culture as fundamentally arrogant, disconnected from nature's wisdom and how things actually work.
He was critical of education, too.
The source sums up his feelings, yeah. That conventional education tends to just drill the known. It splits knowledge into fragments, separates it from life, trains specialists who lose sight of the interconnected whole.
Discourages thinking outside the box.
Precisely. Discourages openness to how everything fits together.
Let's circle back to water one last time.
Oh.
The book highlights the global water crisis.
Yes, pointing out it's not a lack of water overall, but a crisis of pollution, mismanagement, and waste. Things like incredibly inefficient irrigation.
Which uses the most water globally.
By far. Something like 70% of water use, and maybe 60% of that is wasted through evaporation or runoff. Plus, destructive large dams, increasing industrial and urban use. This source notes predictions of water wars.
And privatization. The source takes a strong stance there.
It does. It argues that privatizing water puts profit ahead of sustainability and public health, potentially leading to bulk supply schemes that encourage consumption even when it's not needed, just to meet contracts. Again, that's the viewpoint presented in the book.
There's also a very strong section criticizing water fluoridation.
Extremely strong. The source calls it a public health outrage. It claims the fluoride used isn't pure, but often industrial waste byproducts like fluorosilicates, sometimes containing heavy metals.
But it's presented as being for dental health.
Right. But the source claims independent research proves otherwise and that it's misleading. It asserts fluoride accumulates in the body, links it to higher risks of cancer, brain and kidney issues, premature aging, points out it's rat poison at higher doses.
And it's not just in water.
No, added to toothpaste, sometimes food. The source argues its promotion wasn't based on solid science, but on political pressure from industries, specifically mentioning LCOA and the Mellon family, needing to dispose of fluoride waste.
That's a very serious accusation.
It is. We need to be clear we're presenting the claims as detailed in the source material, impartially.
So the source connects drinking this kind of treated dead water to broader problems.
It makes a direct link, claiming that water which is sterilized, chemically treated, physically disrupted, leads to physical decay, mental deterioration, a kind of systematic degeneration of people.
Is there a proposed solution in the book? How to fix bad water?
Yes. Filtration is seen as necessary, but not sufficient. The key step, according to this view, is re-energizing the water, using a vortex-based system to transmute those negative energy imprints.
Like airing out a stuffy room.
That's the analogy used, yeah. Fresh energy replacing the stale negative patterns.
Despite all the challenges and lost work, his ideas haven't completely vanished, have they?
No, his legacy persists. The source mentions people like John Wilkes, who developed flow-form sculptures that create figure-of-8 vortices to energize and purify water, directly inspired by Schauberger's observations of mountain streams.
And Callum Coates.
Absolutely crucial. He dedicated years to translating and compiling Schauberger's often difficult writings into English, making them accessible to a wider audience through books like Hidden Nature.
Are people still trying to build his machines or explore these ideas?
Yes, the source indicates ongoing efforts. Researchers, independent engineers trying to reconstruct devices, exploring implosion physics, vortex science, the structure of water, biocommunication. His ideas definitely resonate with some people today.
It reminds me of that line in the source about different kinds of science.
Yeah, the idea that there's the science taught in schools, and then there are the weird things outside the mainstream, often seen as dangerous because they could fundamentally change things, challenge established knowledge and power.
It really does make you wonder what we might be missing, doesn't it? By sticking only to the conventional, forceful, linear approaches.
Especially when nature itself seems to operate on such different principles, subtle, dynamic, vortical.
So let's try to wrap this up. Schauberger's core message seems to be about aligning with nature's methods, implosion, vortices, creative energy, rather than fighting against them with our often destructive, explosive technologies.
Exactly. He saw water and forests as absolutely vital, intelligent systems. His work holds out this tantalizing potential for clean energy, healthier ecosystems, healthier people, if we could just learn to work with nature's principles.
His story is also a bit of a cautionary tale, isn't it? About how radical ideas can face resistance, especially when they challenge powerful interests or established science.
Definitely. And it connects right back to you, the listener, thinking about the water you drink, the environment around you, future energy sources, and just the challenge of sorting through different kinds of information and perspectives in our world.
So here's a final thought to ponder, drawing from all this. If matter is just energy, kind of frozen energy, and nature achieves incredible results using subtle, creative vortex motion, What fundamental truths about energy and reality might we be completely overlooking by focusing so much on brute force and explosion?
Or maybe put it this way, faced with huge challenges like water scarcity and climate change, what essential wisdom, what practical solutions might we uncover if we just took the time to really observe, deeply observe, and try to understand the patterns, the shapes, the movements inherent in nature itself, the way Viktor Schauberger did? It certainly leaves you thinking.